Roger Ison-Haug, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I've known you for a long time, and you've always been a man with many hats, a lot of balls in the air. So I appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
And on a more sentimental note, thank you for putting me here in this chair here in mnemonic. You're definitely one of the few that I would consider a mentor. Had a very important part of my career development when I was just a little baby. I think I was 22 or 23 when I first met you. And from a random stroke of just luck, IBM had no other choice but to give me the role as a channel manager for their security division. And I was lucky enough to have you as a partner for one of our, definitely the most successful partner that we had, where you were the chief executive officer, the big boss. Took me under your wing, took a lot of time out of your day to teach me things. And that was, we did great things together. Our clients were happy. And we both moved on. But now I'm still here asking you for favors. So nothing has changed.
No, but thank you, Robby. It feels like a lifetime ago since we met first time. And you were pure young.
Yeah.
And your Norwegian were worse than my English. But you still managed to get a job at IBM Norway.
Yeah.
That was impressive.
Yeah. It was very fun.
And you mentioned that we made a lot of fun things with clients. And you learned from me, but I also learned from you. You're not afraid of taking a risk and going the extra mile to serve a client. And for IBM, hiring you to serve a partner like Peda, where I was CEO, were a right move. Because they were quite, I'm gray in my hair. Most people at IBM don't have hair.
Yeah,
so they needed some fresh blood.
Yeah.
And you definitely were fresh blood and gave new initiative and new energy to their business. So we did a lot of fun and good business as well.
Yeah, I would say so as well. So thank you for that. I'd give you a hug right now, but we'll do an air 5 instead. It's not normally how I start a podcast, so let's rewind a little bit. Tell us about yourself, Roger, for those of us that don't know you.
Yeah, well, I've been in the IT industry for a long time. I started in 1994, and most of the time working for American tech companies until for, must be 11 years since I left Symantec. And then started as a partner for IBM and others, building up a business in Norway. Do that for 5-6 years, building it from zero to quite okay business.
Yeah.
But I always had my heart with the technology and how to make technology better for the users and the environment. For the last years, I've been working as a CISO for a company that are working with technology worldwide, predicting how things are going to be, how weather will be, how the different change in the climate will affect different businesses. So I can now combine the technology part with that interest as well.
And you're also part of like 1 billion other companies I know, and you're also doing a PhD right now?
Yes.
Correct?
That's correct.
Tell us about what's that about?
So I started on the cybersecurity and leadership PhD, so hopefully finishing next year.
Cool. Awesome.
It's quite fun. So now I'm digging into all the details of the data that we're usually trying to get out of the customer. Why they're doing stuff, why they're not doing stuff. How can you actually sit and watch things go so extremely wrong when you actually have the data? And to see how that actually is anchored to the leadership. Because the leaders are extremely good in looking at the profit, looking at the stock value, the cost before income before the different type of cost, all those stuff. They can have the detailed financial report. On the cyber report is blank. So to find a way to bridge that gap, that's been a motivation for that degree.
And also, you're CISO now. Yeah. Most of your roles before that were like, business development or CEO. So you were the leadership, right? But what's been the biggest difference now that you're not like, is it nicer being a CISO than it is being the big boss, the top boss?
Wow, that's a very good question because it's challenging from having the ultimate option to say go, no go. Now I suddenly have to start to negotiate with people. I have to find a way to make them understand what I actually mean. If you are a CEO and people don't understand you, you can just move on. And you can try to get the team to learn on the way. If you're working as a CISO, you need to work through different people in the organization. Because I have nothing to do with IT. I have a lot to do with IT, but nothing to do with it. That means I can create the policy, the administrative controls, but I don't select any software or methods of doing it. I just make sure it's meeting this technical control, and that is good. But then you have to flip it around and see upwards and see very often that the leaders are looking at cybersecurity and IT just like a cost. So to find a way to see that if certain thing happens, it will have quite big impact on the financial result. And instead of looking at cybersecurity as something that is slowing down the business, look at it as rails on the road. Can make you drive a lot more faster because the rail will stop you from going off the road. But you need to be able to map the where you're earning your money with the risk. So to mapping the risk with the revenue drivers to present that how hot is the heat map today. And if we do certain changes, we can reduce the heat. We can make it less likely that something will happen. Linking it to the revenue stream, to the potential new business, that is actually the biggest challenge.
Before I move on to my questions here, I know that you work with a lot of different boards, or boards will contact you and say, hey, come teach us security. Is that understand? Is there a difference? Okay, when I think of like a CEO, CFO, CIO, there's a difference between the leadership team and the board, right? The board is supposed to be more long-term, and the leadership is not necessarily shorter-term, but they also have like KPIs what's the difference between those two?
I see that the difference is that the board are elected by the owners. They're representing the shareholders. And they want to have their back covered. Make sure that they are doing the right thing, assessing the daily operational part of the business. And they are meeting the leadership maybe 4 times, 6 times a year. And they need to be able to ask the right questions. And then to give them the tools on what to look for. That is extremely valuable. For them to understand if the CEO says something, they should be able to actually ask the next 2-3 questions to validate how solid the answer really is. Because very often, if you're looking at most CEOs, they are coming from sales. You have a good sales rep becoming a sales manager, a regional manager, moving up. So very often you have a lot of people in CEO position with, let's say, not deep technical knowledge.
It's a nice way of putting it.
But it is, and they are doing extremely good job with what they're doing, but they have very often too little knowledge on what they actually are answering. So we are getting a situation where you might mislead the board without meaning it. The same if you're having a CEO without a financial background and they're getting a lot of financial questions, they might answer wrong as well. Because you answer based on your best effort. And for the board to be able to figure out if this is answer based on reality or just what the CEO say to just get through the board meeting, I can help them to create that path to actually understand. And flipping it around, for a CEO to actually impress the board with digital thinking and using cyber as an enabler for innovation, they very often need to understand that complexity to get new funding, new budget to do stuff. So it's 2 different sides. And now with the NIS2 coming, this is just like GDPR on speed for IT security. So that's going to be really, let's say, challenging and fun.
So I would guess now that there's a lot of companies reaching out saying, hey, I need your help. Or who's usually reaching out to you to help their board? Is it a board member themselves, or is it somebody?
What I have seen most is actually companies trying to sell information that or sell training and do webcasts. So far, I don't think the majority of organizations understand what is about to hit them. Because they are still, a lot of them, suffering with not being compliant with GDPR. still. It's 5 years now, and they're still not complied. And we see it also with the public sector. At last, as now with the new breach today, where they're not actually sharing the correct data between systems. I would say that it isn't going to be on the agenda before someone at the board are capable of asking the correct question. Or if you have some really strong ambassadors in-house that can actually raise the question, get something moving around it. Because it's very simple to fix. It's not hard at all. But if you're not getting any penalty for not doing anything, you don't fix it. Now you will get huge penalties.
So you know me fairly well. I'm not very scared to do too much, especially if it has to do with talking. But if I was to get called into a board meeting, I'd be actually very nervous, number one, because I feel like I wouldn't be speaking their language. So what is it actually like going into those, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to talk about cybersecurity. Like how are those conversations? How do they start?
I think it's important to understand that they don't know your domain and to respect that. Because they are not elected to be in a board because they are cyber experts.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So they know the business, and very often, if you look into a board, they are assembled with different competencies, and they should be. But what is very often lacking in leadership groups and also in board is someone with the solid knowledge about cyber. They have good people with marketing, they have good people with finance, they have legal, they have all that stuff. But when it comes to the digital area, they are lacking permanent representation in the board or in the leadership group. Very often a CISO reports to a CIO or a CFO, not directly to the CEO. Very often a dotted line as a, what do you call it, a way to justify that you're not directly reporting, but you're still reporting to me, but not directly. I don't want to have all the shit at once. I want it more on a little slower pace. So we need to understand that they don't understand when we're talking about RTO. They don't understand MAD when we're talking about maximal allowable downtime and stuff like that. But they understand if you're talking about net shareholders' value, the share price. If you're able to link that this risk might reduce the share's value, then they are at least listening. They need to be able to map that. But you have to, and the problem is not with the people in the board, it's more or less with the schools teaching the people that goes to the board. If you're taking education in Europe, you learn extremely little with IT if you take a financial one. You have a financial degree.
Yeah.
How much IT was there?
Zero.
I just took the board class at Norges Handelshøyskole. It was 2 hours with a guy from a good company, more or less doing commercial for what they are able to do. I didn't learn anything. If you're taking the board academy training, it is nothing. I took an MBA at the University of East London. With one of the topic was digitalization, nothing with it security. Don't touch it.
That's so funny, right?
Yeah. So the universities and also the private trainings, they're not including cyber. So we are educating people to lead companies, and it looks like they are missing one arm. They need 2 arms to carry the weight, and they are missing one arm, and that arm is the digital arm.
Yeah.
And then they don't understand the necessity of it because they do not understand the complexity. They just think we can move to the cloud, or we can just move to someone else. Then you have a ton of other problems you're just bringing in. You have the third-party risk. You have the risk of moving to the clouds with all the extra cost, all the extra security issues. So they are buying things almost like you are blind.
Yeah. I remember when we were working together, I would it was like say in presentations, digitalize or die, right? If you're a company and you don't have a very strong plan to digitalize and meet your customers on that sort of arena, then you're going to die. And why is security important? Because if you don't have security, then you don't have a sustainable IT. But that hasn't really reached the curriculum part of
education.
Our lives yet. Yeah.
No, it hasn't. And I'm so surprised because I also took at a couple of, I needed to validate this, and this is something I did in part of my doctoral degree. So I took another courses on different universities in Norway. And I was first surprised and then a little irritated because it costs a lot of money. If you go to take the master in risk management in Stavanger, IT, no, nothing. It's everything about physical risk. So instead of learning about cyber risk, you're learning about more like the health, like the soft part, the human security, very strong. IT, more or less missing. So we have to keep that in mind when you're going into the board or going into the meeting with the executives. They haven't had the opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
So you need to be humble about that and instead try to learn their language.
Yeah.
So you can adapt to the words they are using when they are talking in the corridors, when they are talking about how to grow, how to develop. You need to adjust your language dramatically.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I understand why the situation is the way it is because, we're a lot of security people are scared to talk to the board for obvious reasons. And then if they've never had any ways of learning what we know, then I guess it's that meeting doesn't happen by itself, I guess. Yeah,
but it was quite fun. I before Christmas last year, I was invited to the biggest law firm in Oslo, in Norway, and they have yearly. They are nominating the best share of boards in Norway.
Okay, yeah.
With just the top companies, and the pitch I gave there was very elementary. It should actually be for quite new people.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Like
and
an intro to cybersecurity sort of thing, or what?
Yeah. I was there with the CISO from a big bank and one from a public company, and it was very, very elementary. It was not advanced at all, and that resonated with them.
Yeah.
We pinpointed the correct stuff, but it's also a little scary. This is some of the largest organizations in Norway.
And they enjoyed it though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of phone calls afterward if can help with this, answer that, do things like this.
Yeah.
But they're missing out on the core thing. The core thing is you have to have, you need to understand the core of your business. And you need to understand the risk you're taking with taking on other vendors, taking on other, you cannot just outsource it and think it's okay. It's more advanced to outsource it than do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that you didn't just teach the board all these important people of cybersecurity in that day, right? So that's it's an introduction. Yeah. Spike their interest.
Yeah.
And then what happens after that? Like, what's like a normal? What are you supposed to do if you actually wanted them to get to the level that you think they should be?
Well, I think that every board should ask for external help at least twice a year to assess the digital hygiene from the outside. It takes me
an honest look at something.
Yeah, from someone that don't have anything to lose on being honest with them. Yeah. And it takes maybe 30 minutes for me to assess the company from the outside. Yeah. It's very, very quick. Sometimes I'm using tools like from MasterCard, the Risk Recon. All the time I'm using my own script and doing other checks. Also using hacking tools to get an overview. It is not a rocket science. Then you can get an honest view. A little bit like going to the doctor. If you have a high blood pressure, it takes them 5 seconds to figure it out. Yeah. They can tell you what to do. We can do the same thing with other companies. And if you look at majority of the companies that are being breached, they could have avoided being breached if they've done this check. Yeah. There's a lot of reports on what is actually is the normal companies that will be breached. A little bit looking at me, I'm the candidate for heart attack because I am overweighted, I don't exercise, I like good food, like good drink. I will most likely not be around till I'm very old. And many companies will have the same destiny because they are so open in the digital era, on the digital front. And if you're looking at the digital era from early morning until now, it hasn't changed. We can look back to some of the large, maybe more well-known attacks like Target, Yahoo, Maersk, all this. They had something very similar. It had a lot of tools, no control. They didn't have a very good digital front door. So, and if you are a normal burglar, you want to get rich robbing a house, you don't go to a castle.
Yeah.
You go to a little more shabby place.
Yeah.
And if you go to some of the big Norwegian companies, and also the rest of the world, they are very shabby when it comes to the digital hygiene. So it's easy to get in. And another thing, many companies wants to have a cyber insurance. How will you get that if you are overweighted, smoking, drinking, in a digital way then? You look like shit and you're still trying to get insured.
Yeah.
It won't happen. It will be very expensive.
But they buy that insurance because that's something they understand.
They buy it at an extremely high cost.
Yeah.
Because the insurer know that this company is most likely to go down.
Yeah.
But last week, or 2 weeks ago, one of the investor companies in Norway called me and said, we have invested money in this company and they're not getting insurance. Can you have a look at them and see why? And it took me 5 minutes to give him a 3-page report saying that this is most likely why. The digital hygiene is far from where it should be. And that is the first thing the board should ask for. They're asking for the key data on the finance, how much cash is in the bank, how is the turnaround of people. That is on the CEO's report to the board, every board meeting. What about adding a couple of questions on cyber? Shouldn't be that difficult.
And I mean, you're talking about risk recon from MasterCard, and those are products that are really good at looking at a company from the outside. If you were to also look under the inside, there's probably more like if you're bad on the outside, if you look bad on the outside, it's not any better on the inside, I would assume. Or
exactly. But one thing to be, if you just reason around it, if you are a hacker, most what is being named as targeted attack is, and they're not targeted. They are by coincidence. Like the Amedia, it wasn't targeted. It was just that they were just unlucky to be there.
Yeah.
And if you have too many vulnerabilities open, seeable for the world, you are more likely to be a victim.
Yeah.
Or can you be a victim if you're doing it to yourself? I mean, if you don't have control of your certificates, on your firewalls, on your patching, you're not actually a victim. You're more like putting yourself out as bait.
Yeah.
So I would say it's wrong to say it's a victim. If you're a victim of cybercrime.
Yeah.
But if you can at least finish or polish that outside view as a first step, then you can go inside and see, okay, what needs to be fixed on the inside. Because it's important to do all the right stuff when it comes to microsegmentation, fixing user with privilege they shouldn't have and stuff like that. Because very often if you're looking at the company from the inside, you can see that. And I can still find myself in some companies when I'm assessing them, companies that I shouldn't be a part of their AD and still find my name there.
Yeah.
Because they don't have control of users.
Yeah.
But start with what you can fix quick.
Yeah.
And then work your way backward. Don't try to be so smart. You cannot solve this by a software. This isn't something you can buy. This is about the process, and this is about working with a methodology that will make you a little more secure for every day when you go to work. So following a standard like ISO 27001, something similar to that, just to have that practice in organization, would reduce the risk dramatically.
So I think we got into this topic by saying, like, what do you start out with? And so what you start out with is just how do you look out from the outside, right? A digital... And I can already think of myself as a few interesting ways that would capture their attention, like, how just having somebody say, have you ever heard of Showdown before? Like you can easily get them to understand that concept by just with some fun examples, whatever. What about then after that?
Well, then it's about figuring out how big is the gap from where the risk you are willing to take and the current risk you are operating in. You have to find that risk, acceptable risk. Everything is risk. If you don't take risk, you don't get anything done. You cannot earn money without risk. And you cannot have IT operation without risk either. But you need to understand what level of risk. And then you have to find a way to bridge that gap, to piece by piece fix it. So what I'm usually doing after figuring out where they are is actually to ask them, what is the most valuable part of your operation? Is it the customer-facing system? Is it the email? Is it the database? What is it? And then figure out how that is actually built. Make sure that we are protecting all the layers. Making sure that when the board next time getting a report, they can say, okay, we invested 100 hours and we have now eliminated this number of risks, and we are maybe gone from red to yellow on the risk map.
Yeah.
So you have to take it step by step. It's not a quick fix, but it needs to start from the top.
Yeah.
You need to create a culture where people understand the importance of cyber for all organizations. It is not just healthcare, schools, grid system, but it is if you're making bread, everything is IT. We saw now with one of the biggest food manufacturer in Norway. They were out a long time. We had this hand-printed notes in the store. We don't have sausages today because of a hack.
Cyber attack, yeah. Remember that.
Very bad.
Yeah.
This must be some... Yeah. People have to feel the pain before they do something. And that is the bad part. And you can see from the large breaches around that the CEO is the one getting fired. They are very often leaving quite early. But the biggest cost here is actually the shareholders' value going down. It is very often people like you and me are losing our jobs because the people on the top do not understand the risk. They understand the financial risk, but not the cyber risk.
Yeah. So, the board understands risk, but they don't understand their company-specific risk and how cyber relates to that, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't understand it. I don't think most of the board understand the cyber risk, and they don't have the competency to ask the questions. And if they ask the questions, do they understand the answer? So they should maybe have, if you don't have a person in the board with a competency, you can have advisors helping the board. You don't need to be someone elected there, but they need to find competency somewhere. Sorry for that.
Leave the part out. But there's not like that everybody in the board has to be like cyber professionals, but...
No. If you go to a board, you usually have someone with financial expertise, you have someone with marketing, someone with legal. So it's a mix. A board is like a football team. Different positions, different position, different knowledge. And if they can play good together, they can really bring great value to the CEO and to the company. And that's a good way to protect the shareholders' investment, but also a good way to secure the company's growth going forward.
Right.
Because now, very often, the board is just like a reporting part for the CEO when it comes to cyber. It's very seldom a big discussion. And if you look at the maturity level on most companies, it's quite low. We are still a lot of companies running around with sneakers, fixing stuff. Almost no company I meet have full asset overview.
Yeah.
If I run Pincastle in a company, I find hundreds of accounts that shouldn't have been there. So it's the same thing when I started in IT.
Yeah.
It's the same basic thing missing, and that is a little scary.
The fundamentals, right? Patching and asset management.
Exactly. And you cannot expect things to be solved unless you have a plan for it. And that plan has to have some anchor into knowledge. And it has to have a knowledge into where you are and where you want to be in the future.
Right.
That is challenging, but it's a fun part to study. It's a lot of research done on it, and there's a lot of research missing. But that's what I'm doing this cybersecurity leadership, because I want to see how much impact will the correct leadership have on good practice on cybersecurity.
What is your main takeaway from that while we're there, actually?
The leaders do not invest enough time on cyber before they have a breach.
For they have to, basically.
Yeah, and then they have a breach, and then they put in a lot of unnecessary money to fix it. Very often too much money.
Yeah.
You just try to buy your way out of something. And doing that, you're not necessarily solving the right stuff. You're solving something. Very often, if you go into an organization that have had this situation, you can find tons of licenses never used, paid for. Great salespeople been there. I've been one of those salespeople, so I know that. But it's embarrassing to see. I'm meeting myself in the door a little bit there, because you can see a lot of unused boxes, unused licenses, because finally they got money to do a lot of things. This is just like dieting. If you diet really hard in January, you're still fat in December. Because you just do it in January.
Yeah.
It's a little bit the same problem.
Yeah. So last question with the boards. Once you have your initial support, they understand that this is important for me, for the company. How do you maintain that? Because we don't want it to be like you said, in January we get skinny and then fat again by December, right? Yeah. So how do you actually maintain that, or through your experience?
They should have a deeper on their steering board yearly wheel. They should have at least 1 to 2 deep dive a year on cyber, depending on where they are. If you're an organization that are really trying to do innovation and really try to do something, you might depend on cyber and the digital space a little more than others. So maybe you should have it more frequent. Yeah. But if you are if not in that situation, maybe a couple times a year are enough. Yeah. But you should also make sure that you're building a culture of security in the organization. And that must be addressed from the top. It has to grow from the bottom. But it needs to be nurtured from the leaders. Yeah. So there's a board, and then so the board is having this understanding. Our goal is here then to just make sure that they're asking and putting pressure on the leadership to actually invest in cybersecurity and understand it themselves, right? Yeah. So you're starting at the very top, but it's not necessarily them pushing their employees of the company. It's them pushing the leadership, which then needs to push it down. You need to put a direction, and I think the best way is to do it without push. As long as the top leaders understand what is needed to reach the 5-year plan, to open up for new markets or be attractive to be acquired by another company or to grow the shareholder value. You need to understand that it's hard to see any industry that can do that without a good cyber hygiene today, because everything is digitalized one way or the other. And now when you're putting in AI, you must have a little what do you call it?
Skepticism?
No, you must be a little bit. You can't love your life too much if you put an AI engine into a system that is unsecure, because that will find everything, and everything might go out the front door. And it was a little leakage in the GPT chat and the Bing chat a couple of weeks ago, where data were actually leaking out. I don't think that the business leaders understand that the new technology will find your data and share it with anyone that wants it if you don't protect it. So we need to put the right measurement depending on where you are as an organization, what type of industry you're in. But with this fast change, the pace that is on the change now, you have to have control.
Well, I guess one good thing about AI is that both the leadership and the board have heard about it, so they're asking questions about it. So maybe this is a good time to start wiggling.
You heard so many. It's very easy to hear that people don't really understand what they are discussing. It's a little bit hearing politicians that have been elected. In Norway, there is no requirement for being a politician except having a pulse. You can be as brain dead as possible as long as you have enough voters. And it's a little bit the same feeling you get when you are hearing some leaders talking about we will innovate, we will do digital transformation, and they have no clue what it is. It's not about taking a Word document into a PDF. That is not a digitalization. No. But some people still think that. It's about the entire way of interacting, how you are doing your entire operation, and how you can make that to be an agile and flexible business model. If you can do that, you need to have cyber control. Otherwise, it will not work.
Any other advice before we move on about security people trying to influence their leadership or their board? Like if you were, because a lot of cybersecurity people, but you've been there, you've been in this industry for a long time. Where should they start? What should they do?
Try to understand the business. Understand where the revenue is coming from, and make sure that you show that you understand. It's not a straight path. It's not the fastest way on cybersecurity. You need to take a lot of corners, not corners, but you have to travel quite far to get quite short, because you need to get a lot of people on board. You need to
Right.
have this cultural change.
Yeah, because now we're kind of being harsh on boards and leadership and understanding, but we're knowing a lot of cybersecurity people. We're not very good at the business side stuff either. So
No.
it's a two-way. Takes two to tango.
It is, and it's important to understand that we have different roles in the organization. We have different competency, and it's very easy to be cocky with knowledge of an area when other people don't. So I full respect that they don't have it, but I also think it's strange if you are elected at the board today, and you think you are clever at something that you never learned. Like if I were elected to a board, I would never take the legal position. You know, I can some law, but I'm not a legal consultant. I cannot do that part. I cannot do the financial part. I have studied finance, but I cannot do the chief financial officer job. You know, it's not my core competency. And if you're sitting on a board, be honest with your shortcomings, because you have to bring in your strong side into that mix, so your shortcomings will not be so exposed.
Yeah, right. Well, the camera just died.
Yeah,
Because I forgot to charge it.
Yeah.
So I will say, Roger, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting where I am today. I'm very happy spoiled boy. And that's in part due to you. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
I owe you
Thanks.
a lot.
Thanks.
And one day you have to take up from that.
Yes.
Ciao.
Ciao.